Welcome to the Giving a Purpose podcast, where we bridge the highs, the lows, the lessons learned through life's journey, and filling in the gap. So you already know what it is. New week. That means we got to get our energy up. All right, because we know how that momentum works. We want to make sure it takes us through the whole week so we can accomplish everything. Everything that we have on our list to do. All right, I am your host, Mr. LA of the Giving a Purpose podcast. Listen, man, I hope you guys are enjoying everything so far. If you are, and also if this is your first time, right there in that corner there, man, hit that subscribe button. Also click the bell. Let people know. And also, if you're listening on the many platforms that you can listen on, Apple, Spotify, all those good things, make sure you subscribe on there. Also, leave a review. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you are enjoying the content that we are giving you. All right. So listen, I got to switch the tone. So I put my battle stuff on. I got my fraternity stuff on. I got the fatigue. Shout out to the bros that make this hat Dungeon Forward, man. Shout out to them. Black businesses, man. Make sure you guys go and check them out. But I got to change the tone just a little bit, man. Got to be a little bit serious, because a lot of things have been irking me. You know, when something just irks your nerves, that's how I'm feeling right now. Something is just irking my nerves, and it irks my nerves on different fronts because, one, I see it in my players, right? So my players and my students, right? I have this thing with them that I want them to be accountable, right? I want them to be accountable for the choices they make, the decisions they make, and we're responsible for the outcomes of them, whether good or bad. What I want them to understand is it's not that nobody doesn't care that you may mess up or you may fail, but it's something that can be fixed most of the time. But the thing that we respect is you taking accountability instead of pointing the finger. It's so many times, I'm, with students, well, why didn't you do this? Well, it's because blah, 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 this. They got an excuse for this. It never starts with, well, I just messed it up. Like, I'm not going to lie. I just didn't do my best. I was procrastinating. But it's always some outside source. You never start with yourself. And it's the accountability part, man. We have so many times we're playing games, and I coach a game of failures, right? I coach baseball. Baseball is a game of failures. Listen, it's the only sport where you can do almost 30% of your job and make millions of dollars, right? It's about failure. It's about the longevity and the stamina of it over a course of a season. And there's going to be a lot of mess ups. But the one thing that irks my nerves is when you point in the other direction and you don't point to yourself saying, you know what, messed it up, get it next play. That's all we ask. We know you're going to mess up. It's fine. It's cool. But the worst thing is when you don't take accountability, because it shows the lack of maturity that you have. But you know what irks me more than that? When adults do it. I know this is a different tone of how usually my podcasts are, but you guys know some people in your lives, especially, young adults or adults that are in your lives that don't take accountability. Start with you first. Listen, I know there's something I've talked about a lot, and something I would always emphasize in growth in yourself, and something we've talked about on this podcast many times. It's assessing yourself, right? And then assessing yourself, right? You have to take accountability of what you did first. People always ask me, well, how do you move on from this? Or what do you do in a situation? I start with me first. Like, what did you do to jack this up? What did you do to make this adjust? Or what did you do? What could you have done better? But I always start with taking accountability. Like, you know what? At the end of the day, I jacked that up. There's so many things in my life I look back on and like, man, I jacked that up. That's my fault. You know what I'm saying? And you have to take accountability. Now, one thing I'm not sure if I've shared it in depth like this on the podcast, but I was married at one point, and people, you always get the question like, what happened or whatever the case may be. And first, I always start over. Well, first, her version is probably going to be different from mine, but I'm going to tell you my version. And I said, and usually not all the time do I get into details because what was in my marriage stayed in my marriage. And so what I tell them is it doesn't matter whether if I tell you stuff, whether you think it was her fault or the situation or whatever the case may be, I start with God left me in charge. I have to take accountability. I was the man in the relationship. I was the head in the relationship, and things fall on my shoulders. And I tell them all the time, I said, someone, her father, of course, gave her away to me, right? Made her now my responsibility. And so, regardless of how I feel about certain situations, or at the end of the day, how she feels, and like I said, because her version could be different, I have to take accountability for all of it because I was in charge of it. I was the steward over it. So I got to start with me. I got to start the assessment of what happened, of how did you jack it up, Jacques? What could you have done better? You see what I'm saying? And that's all we're asking from other adults sometimes. Sometimes it is like there are some things that you can't come back from. But for the most part, people just want you to take accountability. I think it's a lack of immaturity when you don't take accountability for what you did, regardless of what it is. And I guess another thing that irks me sometimes is when you don't start there, when you don't start with the accountability. You start with being the victim first instead of like, all right, let me step back, look at this situation. What did I do? What did I cause? All right, I could have done that better. Yeah, I could have said that a little different. Yeah, it was an emotional moment when I said it, but let me take accountability for what I said. And this is what I was trying to say. You see what I'm saying? That changes the dynamic of a conversation or a relationship. People respect a lot more when you take accountability. But just like, I tell my kids, just like I tell my players, and just like I want from other adults, let's start being accountable first for what we did. That's where we want to start. Accountability. I'm telling you, once you start taking accountability, and I'm saying this from personal experience, you don't dwell on stuff long. It doesn't eat at you. You don't get caught in, well, what if I did this? If I start with, all right, because sometimes when you start with yourself, you may be the one doing the apologizing. If you feel what I mean. Like sometimes when you take accountability, you may be the one apologizing and not necessarily looking for an apology. And now you don't have to carry that burden or that anxiety of something because you know what? I did that part and jacked it up. All right. And I hope people understand like where I'm coming from with that and how important it is to take accountability. Like I said, I know the tone was a little different, but sometimes you got to be serious, man. And with the audience that I have, it's important for you to take accountability. Start with yourself, right? That's what it's a part for me when I talk to clients and stuff like that as a self-investment coach or a self-help coach. Let's start with you first because necessarily you can't fix another person. Like that person has to take accountability, has to take ownership for their own things. It's just like you tell somebody, or you heard this before, like when you're talking to somebody that may be on drugs and they're trying to get off and they're struggling, until they admit it, they take accountability, that's when the growth starts. But once they blame everything else, the healing can't start. Nothing can start until you take accountability or until you want to make that change. All right. And understand, like when you take accountability And these things go hand in hand, especially when you're in the wrong and different things like that. Apologizing and accountability go together. And also the tail end of that is change behavior. Because there's a lot of people that apologize but commit the same things or do the same acts or doing the same things. See, apology really doesn't mean anything without change behavior. That means you could just be saying it to save face or just saying it to end the conversation. But take accountable for your actions. Be mature about it. Look at yourself first. Take a look in the mirror and say, what could you have done better? Point at yourself sometimes. Sometimes you got to talk to yourself like that. Sometimes you got to set the tone for yourself like that and take accountability for your actions and take accountability for how your life turns out. It's ultimately in your hands. You have to take control. All right. Have a conversation with God. God, what do you want me to do? Let me take accountable for the sins that I've done so I can hear you. Let me move out of the way because I've done it my way long enough. But let me take accountability for the things that I've done. Man, I appreciate you guys so much. As always, man, please make sure you follow me. Listen, man, I need the followers to go up on the YouTube channel. All right. Make sure you guys go and check out the Giving a Purpose podcast, as well as the Giving a Purpose podcast on the IG page. That's giving_a_purpose_podcast. If you want to follow me, the brand of self investment coach, Mr. LA_2 on Instagram and Twitter. All right. So, man, I appreciate you guys. So you guys already know what I need you guys to do for the final part. And that is make sure you live on purpose and make sure you live in purpose. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.
You've been listening to the Giving a Purpose podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play to get new, fresh weekly episodes. For more, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.